Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The general assault rifle meta right now in Warzone is honestly pretty competitive throughout, but there's a super close competition up towards the top of the category in general. And so today I wanted to go through and break down the 5 absolute best rifles and rifle loadouts that we've got in the game right now. And I wanted to start first here with some stat breakdown thanks to True Game Data. As always, big shout out to Tony for allowing us to have all these details so readily available. We got 9 of the most competitive rifles in the game right now. The BP-50 we know is solid. Holger 5.56 has seen some solid buffs. The Kastov 5.45 sort of rising up. Seen a lot of conversation about the M13B. The Jack Patriot M16 variant, obviously full auto. MTZ 5.56 has gotten some buffs, so is the MCW. The SVA has been in the conversation before, and the Geist has been on the up and up as well. So when we go through and we look at 300 health and combination shots for the most accurate TTK, we end up getting a pretty interesting graph here, all things considered. So the first thing that stands out to me the most here is just how consistent the BP-50 still is. The red line here on this graph, obviously great in that close range, very competitive with some other options. Its mid-range is ultra competitive, and then over range, it really starts to shine. Now, you do have to worry a little bit about damage per mag here with its magazine capacity out at 50-60 meters, but if you're landing shots, it's still clearly the best TTK option here out of the category, which is something noteworthy enough in my opinion that this one clearly makes the top 5. The Holger 5.56 buffs have also made this thing super good, especially in the first damage range. The mid-range, it's right there. Then even over range, it ends up becoming one of the better TTK choices, while also being ridiculously easy to use. MTZ 5.56 has also seen several buffs. Our white line here, super competitive TTK throughout it. With certain points, it's actually the best TTK on the graph here. Then over range, also super competitive as well. So those 3 to me, absolute mainstays. People talk about the M13B a lot, and while it's really good in that first damage range, unfortunately, it falls off a cliff, and its TTK, especially in that mid-range, falls off enough that I don't think this one eclipses the top 5. It's close, but not quite in there as of now. The MCW as well. Yes, it's gotten better, but its TTK still does not really stand out in any particular area, unless, of course, you're using the conversion kit. The SVA also pretty close as well, and it's obviously super low recoil, especially in hyper burst, but there are clearly some better choices for TTK throughout and other options that are particularly easy to use as well. And then the Geist, much like the M13B, so good in its first damage range and then falls off a cliff. That actually leaves the Jack Patriot standing here, which is really cool, and the Kastov 5.45 as well. Its first damage range really good, second damage range really good as well, and I think it's competitive enough there that while it does fall off a ton over range and it's so easy to use at the same time, that its first 2 damage range areas there are capable of competing enough that I think this one maybe does eclipse into the top 5. And then M16 really looking good, really looking competitive as well. So now that we've sort of narrowed down our choices, let's jump in game and break down the best setups for these. So at number 5, I've got the M16. While yes, its TTK is so good, I think the only reason that this isn't number 4, 3, 2 is just because being an MW2 gun, you're pretty limited by the attachments that you're able to use on this thing that are actually worthwhile, and it still sort of does have that MW2 gun feel. It absolutely is in the meta conversation and clearly in the top 5, but there are some limiting things here and some cons that are worth noting as well. Also, the fact that you do have to waste an attachment by putting on the conversion kit, I think is a drawback in and of itself, but we are running that Jack Patriot kit on there. Of course, we got that 60 round extended mag, very basic, you know, nothing out of the ordinary here. 45 just not enough in some cases for like trios and quads, so I'd always be going 60 here. I don't know why you can use a 15 round or why that's an option, but of course, never go for that. I do use high grain on here, extends that range and that velo out up to 828, so you'll have a decent hit scan range and a decent damage range as well for that faster TTK. The Bruin Pivot vertical grip is actually really solid here. Very minimal cons to your ADS and Sprintifire, but pretty good control stats, all things considered. And the hurt to your horizontal is not a huge deal when you realize we've also got Cassis Break on here, which pretty much negates that, gives you a really good recoil pattern across the board. Sort of those two combined there feels really solid and really consistent. So the M16, don't sleep on this thing. It actually is pretty solid right now. Next up, we got the Kastov 5.45 at the number 4 spot for me. Like I said, said, and like we saw in that graph, that first damage range, that second damage range, really its close and mid-range areas there are so effective, meaning that like for resurgence gameplay, this is a prime choice because it's going to put enemies down so quick and also be ridiculously easy to control as well. So I initially go for the 2.5 times optic here. You could use a glassless or a nidar, especially if you're playing like more of the mid-range. Those would be viable choices too, really all preference based there. 60 round extended mag, basic yet again, high grain on here as well, up to a 943 velo. That's very solid, decent damage range extensions there too. I go for the Spirit Fire Suppressor, keeps me off the radar, adds in some nice vertical control, horizontal control, decent range and velo buffs as well. And then also the 406 barrel for better range, velocity, and control on there with decently minimal cons to your overall movement speed. At least the super significant ones are not going to be too drastic there, all things considered, or for how you're going to play this at least, right? More so as like a sniper support. You could use it out to, you know, 45, 50 meters, but it really obviously thrives when you're running and gunning and using this as an aggressive rifle, and I love it for that. By the way, as we are going through all the setups here today, if you enjoyed the video or if you find it helpful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. It's always really appreciated. And if you're new to the channel or maybe you have not subscribed yet, let's change that. Every single day I got you covered with news, updates, patch notes, meta breakdowns. Everything going on in COD is right here, so feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. Next up at number 3, I've got the Holger 556. Really the only reason this isn't number 2 is that its ammo capacity is not great. We are stuck with a 40 round extended mag here. It's sufficient, it will work, but it's not a 50 or a 60, which would really make this gun super desirable in my opinion, but it gets the job done. We got the glassless optic on there, another choice that's just more so preference. If you like a different optic more, feel free to run that. We got high grain on here for the better velo and range yet again. It's so easy to use that I don't feel like you necessarily need an underbarrel, especially when Cryo 6 match is going to help out some with the control alongside the range and the velo as well. And then same deal with Spirit Fire as well, range, velo, control benefits there too. So this thing ends up being very accurate, and obviously as we saw, can put players down very quickly. Number 2, I've got the MTZ 556. I've really loved using this thing as of late, mainly just because it's fresh. We haven't used this all that much in the meta so far this year, but after it's seen so many buffs consecutively, it's finally in a really good place, whether you're playing big map or resurgence. I am using the 2.5 times optic here. However, this thing has really good irons. If you're more so playing on just resurgence, you can maybe drop that, put on a high grain, put on a stock for strafe speed or control or whatever you're looking for there. That's a viable choice too. 50 round extended mag gets the job done with this fire rate. It's not the craziest DPM, but it works yet again. Bruin heavy support for some better control. We got Spirit Fire Suppressor. We're up to an 850 velo. That is all right, but also that effective damage range of 54 meters with this, and then obviously the Drifter heavy barrel on there. That's really good for really any rifle or any gun in particular here. This thing's going to have a fantastic ultra competitive TTK pretty much regardless of where you're fighting with this particular build on here. And of course, lastly at number 1, BP50. This hasn't changed in some time. This is easily my favorite gun in the game and sort of been my go-to for the past couple of seasons. Pretty much since this thing was introduced, I've been rocking it almost every single game. So here I go for Kastov Break, just helps that horizontal recoil, makes the pattern a lot more predictable. Lore 9 heavy barrel, better range, velocity, and control on there. DR6 hand stop, because this thing is so easy to use. I could rock this and actually still be super aggressive with my general movement. My ADS and my sprint to fire are good. The strafe speed is pretty solid. Really like the feel of that on there. 45 round extended mag, and then I go for an iron sight build. Obviously, we got the Moat 40 stock for better control and better mobility at the same time. Love the feel of this build in particular, and just the BP50 in general. And that being said, those are the top 5 best rifles in Warzone right now. That's going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out to guarantee you're always up to date with all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.